People have been finding ultra shortcuts since the earliest days of Mario Kart Wii, yet the vast majority of players still don't understand how they work. In this 3-part guide, my goal is to make you a master at finding and understanding ultra shortcuts, whether it's in the Nintendo tracks or one of the many unexplored custom tracks. Before you can start theorizing shortcuts, the most important thing you'll need to know is how the game keeps track of your position in a race through something called the checkpoint system. In order to help explain the checkpoint system, I will use a real-time checkpoint map of Luigi Circuit alongside a corresponding race. Now, Mario Kart Wii uses a series of checkpoints to keep track of where you are in a race at any given time. Shown here is the checkpoint map of Luigi Circuit. Think of each checkpoint not as a line, but rather as the region between two lines. As long as anywhere within this box is touched, the checkpoint will be triggered. The number of checkpoints in each race can vary greatly. In the Luigi Circuit, there are 23. The sizes and shapes of each checkpoint region in a race can vary greatly as well. There are 3 different types of checkpoints, each with their own unique properties: regular checkpoints, key checkpoints, and the start line. You might assume that you need to touch every checkpoint in chronological order to get a lap count, but that's not the case. Only some of the checkpoints are used to determine whether to give you a lap count. These are the key checkpoints, highlighted in red. The start line is also a key checkpoint, though I chose to color it purple instead due to the unique property it has of being able to increase your lap count. All the other regular checkpoints, shown in blue, determine smaller details like respawns that are mostly inconsequential to finding any ultra shortcuts. One clarification I should probably get out of the way now is that the first checkpoint region after the start line is often referred to as Region 0, or CP0. So, if someone mentions Region 1, they're actually talking about the second checkpoint region, not the one immediately following the start line. So, just be careful how things are worded. To help make this all clear, I'm using a checkpoint counter. The checkpoint I am currently in is shown in the last 3 digits of the time. So, the 000 means I'm in Region 0, and when I continue the race, and it changes to 001, that means I'm now in Region 1, and so on. I highly recommend using this mod when looking for ultra shortcuts, but for now, just use it as an indicator for which checkpoint region I'm in at any given moment. Now that you have a basic understanding of the 3 types of checkpoints, I will now go into exactly how the key checkpoints are used for the lap count. Mario Kart Wii has 3 conditions it uses to determine whether to give you a lap count. Number 1, did you cross the start line backwards? If you cross the start line backwards, the game will subtract your lap count by 1, so it's actually possible to have a negative lap count, even though it's not displayed in game. For example, I would have a lap count of -1 right now. The game will not add the lap back again until you cross the starting line once more, so crossing the line again after going over it backwards will not award a lap count. Number 2. Did you touch the last key checkpoint? You are definitely intended to hit every key checkpoint in a race, but in reality, you only need to touch the last key checkpoint in order to get a lap count. Number 3. Did you cut off more than 95% of the track? This is known as the 95% rule, and was the unknown reason for a long time why the Coconut Mall Ultra seemed so unpredictable. It was programmed as a final failsafe to prevent ultra shortcuts, which we know ultimately failed. Now, I'm not going to go a lot into the 95% rule in this video, as it rarely has an impact on whether an ultra shortcut is possible or not. If you want to learn more about it, you can watch, Malio made a really good video, I highly recommend watching it, though I will do a quick demonstration. So as you can see, from the start line to about the entrance of the mall is all the first checkpoint region, and where we begin the lap within this checkpoint region actually is an impact. So, for example, if we're starting the lap from right about where we would normally by the start line, and then go back to the last key checkpoint, that's actually cutting off more than 95% of the track, so we won't get a lap count. However, if we go all the way over here, enter checkpoint region 1, and then go back and enter checkpoint region 0 all the way at the entrance of the shop, so a little bit farther in the race, we will get a lap count now, because we're now cutting off less than 95% of the track, as we added a little bit extra distance. So as you see, I will get a lap count now. And I will demonstrate it not counting the lap too. As you can see, I get a lap count. Now, as you can see, I've started the lap right here. So now if I go back and do the same thing again, this time I actually won't get that lap count. As you can see, although I didn't go backwards, and I did go back the same distance to hit the last key checkpoint, I still didn't get the lap count because of the 95% rule. And one more time, in case you didn't quite catch it, going back here to checkpoint region 2, or checkpoint region 1, and then going back into the first checkpoint region, and then going back, actually will give you the lap count, because you are driving just enough more of the track to bump it over the 95% and seal the lap count. And there you have it. That's a quick lesson on the 95% rule. So, the checkpoint system might seem relatively solid, but the developers made a few mistakes. Firstly, the checkpoints are not active all the time. In fact, there is a specific set of rules for when they are loaded in or not. For each scenario I will be showing, the checkpoint you are currently in will be highlighted. The majority of the time, only the key checkpoints in front of you and behind you are loaded in, making for a total of 2 key checkpoints, with every other key checkpoint unloaded and no longer functional. It isn't until you cross the next key checkpoint, or go back to the previous one, that the next key checkpoint is loaded back in again, and the other one you left behind is then unloaded. In this way, imagine the checkpoints as following you wherever you go. There is one exception to this rule though. As you know, the race is made up of key checkpoints and regular checkpoints. So what happens if you are currently within a key checkpoint? Should the key checkpoint behind you be loaded in, or the one in front of you? Well, the developers couldn't decide either, so they chose both, which is why it is possible for 3 key checkpoints to be loaded in at one time during a special circumstance. The checkpoint in front of you, the key checkpoint you're currently in, and the key checkpoint behind you. I will now drive a normal lap while displaying which checkpoints are loaded in at any given time to help you visualize how the checkpoint system works. And there you go. As you could see, the checkpoints directly in front of me and behind me were always loaded in, but the checkpoints after them were not. Now you are finally ready to apply all of this knowledge to finding an ultra shortcut. You may have noticed that I have yet to provide a definition for what an ultra shortcut even is, but that's because you needed to understand everything else here first. So, an ultra shortcut can be defined as a shortcut that exploits the checkpoint system in order to get a lap count in an unintended way. An ultra shortcut can only be started from the first key checkpoint region, as you can see in this visual, as that's the only time the last key checkpoint is loaded in, besides the end of a normal lap, of course. This works because you are currently in the checkpoint region of the start line, so the key checkpoint in front of it and behind it are loaded in, with the key checkpoint behind it actually being the last key checkpoint of the race, which we know from the second rule of getting a lap count needs to be loaded in order to get a lap count. If you leave the first key checkpoint region, you are in between the next 2 key checkpoints, so the last key checkpoint gets unloaded, and you can no longer get the lap count. And if you cross the line backwards, the last key checkpoint will stay loaded in, but you will still not get a lap count as you cross the line backwards, breaking the first lap count rule. I will now demonstrate why an ultra shortcut can only be started in checkpoint region 0, once again using the corresponding checkpoint maps. I will also be using the Future Fly mod to help me prove this. So, if I found a way to get out of bounds in the first checkpoint region, and landed on the other side of the track, where there are no checkpoints currently loaded in, the game will still think I'm in the checkpoint region right by the start line, and therefore will also keep the last key checkpoint loaded in. So, if I finish the rest of the lap as normal, I will actually be able to get a lap count. And as soon as I touch that checkpoint loaded in, the checkpoint system will return to normal. As you can see, it jumps straight to 20, and I do get the lap count. However, if I go just a little bit farther into the second key checkpoint region, or, checkpoint region 1, and then I find a way to get out of bounds and land on the other side of the track, I actually won't get a lap count, as I've now unloaded the last key checkpoint. So if I try to finish the lap now, I won't be able to get a lap count. As you can see, I passed where checkpoint region 20 was before, however it no longer exists, so I stay at checkpoint region 0, or checkpoint region 1. However, as soon as I cross the start line, which actually is loaded in still, it then does update back to checkpoint region 0 again. So, as you can see, that's why an ultra shortcut can only be started from the first checkpoint region. And I guess, obviously, if you go backwards behind the start line, that's also not going to let you get a lap count. There is one final thing I should clarify before moving on, which is that the game will assume you're in whatever active checkpoint region you touched last. So if I find a way to get out of bounds somewhere in checkpoint region 3, the game will assume I never left checkpoint region 3, and will therefore keep all the corresponding checkpoints loaded in, meaning that anywhere else I go on the track is fair game, as long as it does not touch any of the currently loaded in checkpoints, which we know is from the key checkpoint region behind checkpoint region 3 to the key checkpoint region in front of checkpoint region 3. So as you can see, once I re-enter one of the loaded in checkpoints, it will update again, and I can finish the lap as normal. Now, perhaps the most complex concept I have to explain yet is that there are actually two steps to an ultra shortcut. The first one, as we know, and I explained just a couple minutes ago, is getting out of bounds from the first checkpoint region. Now, as you know now, that is to make the game think you never left the key checkpoint region right by the start line, and to keep the last key checkpoint loaded in. However, in some ultra shortcuts, this actually costs time instead of saving time. However, there are also ultra shortcuts where the act of skipping from the first key checkpoint actually does save the time. So as you can see right now, I just did one quick shortcut. It cut off about half the track, and when I go, I will get a lap count, making it an ultra shortcut. However, let's bring up a hypothetical situation. Let's say I did find a way to get out of bounds from this first checkpoint region, but instead of landing on the other side of the track, I land all the way over here, and because it costs a mushroom, well, it hypothetically costs a mushroom, and I'm landing not that far away from the start line, there's a very decent chance this wouldn't save any time. So, how do we save time? Well, some ultra shortcuts like Maple Treeway and GCN Waluigi Stadium take advantage of the fact that the game still does think we're in checkpoint region 0, meaning that all the other key checkpoints aren't loaded in. And as we know, we only really need to touch the last key checkpoint in order to get a lap count. So, shortcuts that would not have been possible before this weird skip actually are possible now. As you can see, if I skip across this entire lake and land on the other side of the track, skipping multiple key checkpoints, I can then go ahead and finish out the rest of the lap as normal, and I will get a lap count. So, that's a quick way to explain how the two parts of an ultra shortcut. Once again, finding a way to get out of bounds from the first checkpoint region, and then, if necessary, another shortcut to actually save any time. Now, I know this is a lot of information to process, but if you're going to want to find any ultra shortcuts, it's imperative that you take the time to understand it all. There's really no way to get around it. Trust me, I tried. Feel free to ask me any questions if anything didn't make sense. It's the whole point of why I made this guide anyway. Even if you don't want to look for ultra shortcuts, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and the next time that an ultra shortcut is found, you'll be able to understand how it works. Next time, I'll cover the more specific ways on how you might be able to actually pull off an ultra shortcut, like clipping, horizontal walls, and any other method you can use to get out of bounds, as well as the different types of collision. In the meantime, I'll leave a link for all the checkpoint maps for the Nintendo tracks in the description. I'll get more to the actual resources you can use in a later episode. If you know anyone who would be interested in this kind of thing, please share it with them. My goal is to teach as many people about ultra shortcuts as possible. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time with more glitch hunting content.